Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Unplugged. If you saw last week's video, I covered the 5 pros, or in my opinion, the 5 pros of EV ownership, and I said that I was going to do a video with 5 cons. So here are the 5 cons. This is an EV channel after all though, so I really don't want this to be a negative video, as I knew the negative aspects of EV ownership, and I was happy to accept these drawbacks. So yeah, stay tuned for the 5 cons. So in at number 5 is the lack of being able to tow. So on my car and quite a lot of other EVs, they're not actually permitted to tow. I think the only EVs that spring to mind, I think, are the Tesla Model X and the Tesla Model 3. I think they're both approved for towing. The thing is though, what I find odd is the petrol version of like the MG ZS, for instance, that you can specify a tow bar. However, with the EV, you can't. So I don't think it's like a physical problem, because I'm sure they share very similar sort of underpinnings. However, if you were to have one fitted on your, like, I don't know, Renault Zoe or Nissan Leaf, I don't know if the Nissan Leaf is permitted to tow or not, I don't think it is, you're probably going to avoid your warranty or your insurance or something like that. Yeah, in order to tow, I don't really know what a manufacturer has to go through in order to get the car approved. I don't know what sort of criteria they have to meet. Maybe it's a money thing. Maybe it's really expensive to go through the approval process, and MG or Renault, for instance, maybe don't feel that their customer base particularly want to tow. I really don't know. It's something that I would have liked, because I'd really like tow bar mounted bike rack, so I can attach the bikes to the back of the car rather than putting them in the back. But fortunately, my car's big enough that I can take the front wheel off and pop the bike in the back of the car. But yeah, if you've got a trailer, something like that, you want to go down the tip with some rubbish or whatever, unfortunately, I don't think you're permitted to tow unless you've got an EV that is permitted to tow. So that's a real shame. But yeah, that's number 5. So in at number 4 is the cost to buy. So if you was to compare an EV with its ICE counterpart, for instance, they're substantially more expensive. So just take the MG, for example. A petrol manual Excite is 15.5 grand, more or less, whereas the electric version in Excite trim is almost 24.5 grand after the plug-in car grant. And it's the same story for like the Vauxhall Corsa and the Vauxhall Corsa E. So in just using like the SE nav trim, for instance, it's just over 17 grand for the petrol version, and for the electric version it's just over 28. The Peugeot 208 in active trim, petrol version, just over 17 grand. Well, it's the same price as the Corsa, because I think they're basically the same car. However, the Peugeot in it's like electric powertrain is just over 29 grand. So obviously it's substantially more expensive. However, once you have had that initial outlay, your monthly running costs are going to be I say so much cheaper, significantly cheaper. Obviously, you would sort of need to crunch the numbers as to whether it's going to work for you in like a financial sense. I mean, that might not be the reason for some people as to why they're buying an EV. But yeah, it's something to consider. Obviously, you've got to spend a lot more to sort of decrease your monthly outgoings. Yeah, so that's number 4. So at number 3 is the fact that I'm constantly aware of my remaining range. That might just be because it's new to me, and it'd be something that I just get used to. But I've been so used to having 600 miles of range that now I've only got 140, 150. It's just a change of mindset. But then I never ever used a whole tank of fuel in one day. So I've only ever used like portions of it. So before I bought my EV, obviously I considered what my journeys are, and they mostly comprise of sort of 20-mile round trips to work, maybe 60 miles to my parents and friends at the weekend, things like that. So I've just sort of had to change my habits, that on a Friday I come home and stick the car on charge so I'm good to go at the weekend. It's only ever really occasionally that I'd ever do a 200 or 300 mile trip, and that would be sort of like for a weekend away, so it was for leisure rather than for work. Despite all of this though, when my guessometer sort of reads 90 miles, I sort of instinctively think that I need to recharge. However, I'm learning to I've reduced that to sort of like the 30-40 mile mark, because even if I had 40 miles remaining, I could say, for instance, I plugged in overnight and it didn't charge for whatever reason. That's never been the case. At least I could still comfortably get to and from work without having to think, oh, now got to get a taxi, or I've got to get the bus or whatever. The benefit with having an EV is, say for instance, I was to visit my mum and dad. If I left home and I only had like 50 miles of range, I could actually just plug in at my mum and dad's. But then at the same time, I think that's quite rude to sort of say, oh, can I plug my car in? Because I wouldn't ever ask them for like a fiver for the fuel. But having an EV, you've got that benefit. I can park it on their driveway and plug it in using the granny cable. So I can refuel while I'm socialising with my parents, which is great. Number two is like how difficult long journeys can be. I say difficult because it's really not. However, it just takes longer. You can't odds that. You have to stop and recharge, and recharging sort of takes half hour, 40 minutes. So if you're in a hurry, it can be quite time consuming, but for me, that's not an issue. Also, I don't really mind sort of stopping every couple of hours to charge, because I'm happy to have the break. And actually, I think the highway code says something along the lines of every 2 or 3 hours you have to stop for at least 15 minutes anyway. So happy to abide by the highway code. Actually, I've got a bit of a story. So Thursday this week, I actually won tickets to go and play bingo with Gemma Collins. It's a fabulous life, I know. Please don't judge me. Anyway, I got the email at 10 a.m. that morning, and it was at 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. that night. And bearing in mind I live down by Brighton, for me that's like a 250-ish sort of mile drive. And because I hadn't planned to win the tickets, I only had 110 miles of range in the car. So I hadn't planned a route, and I sort of used this as an opportunity to attempt making it up as I sort of went along. Obviously, I put the route into Zap Map and into a better route planner to get an idea of how many times I was going to need to charge, because there was no point taking the tickets if I was never going to make it in time. And after looking it up on a better route planner, it was sort of like doors open at 6:30, and a better route planner said that I would have got there at 6:30. So I sort of just thought, oh, let's risk it for a biscuit. So all in, on my journey up there, I had to charge 3 times. I stopped once at, I can't remember the name of the services now. Cobham services, and actually I charged on an Ionity charger for free, which was brilliant. I just think when it's on free vend, it's fantastic. And then I had 2 more stops. I did actually have a problem with one of the chargers. Surprise, surprise, it was a Ecotricity charger. But yeah, managed to get there for 7 o'clock. So fortunately, you had to arrive sort of between 6:30 and 7:30, and we got there at 7. So I was half hour later than I'd expected, but at least I didn't miss the event, which was the main thing. So it did make me think, I wonder how much of an impact, obviously different cars and obviously different size batteries, what sort of an effect that would have on the journey time. So I've picked 4 cars, and I'll probably just pop up some overlay so you can see the difference in time depending on what EV you're driving. So for instance, a Volkswagen e-up, to do that journey would take 6 hours 28 minutes in total, sort of including the journey and the time to charge. A Renault Zoe ZE50 135 would take 5 hours 59. My MG 5 hours 45 minutes, and a Hyundai Kona 64 kilowatt hour would take 4 hours 59. So obviously there's a great difference in time depending on the size of the battery of the car, maybe how efficiently the car drives. If, for instance, you are doing long journeys, just if you bear that in mind, buy a car that's more appropriate to you, and yeah, it may well work for you. However, I then thought, like, I wonder about, like, over the years how things have improved. So I did the same thing again, but just used Nissan Leaf. So again, I'll just put up an overlay so you can see. So a Leaf 24, that journey would take 7 hours 58 minutes. A Leaf 30 would take 6 hours 44. A Leaf 40, 6 hours 35. I was really surprised between those two that it wasn't quicker. And then jumping up to a Leaf 62, 5 hours 46. So as you can see, sort of like from the Leaf 24 to the Leaf 62, how over the years things have improved, and B, like, obviously how much of a difference the size in battery makes to the how long the journey is going to take you to complete. So yeah, in sort of like an 8-year period, the Nissan Leaf has sort of, that journey would take you 2 hours or over 2 hours less. So I think that's brilliant. So as the years go on and batteries get bigger and chargers get faster at charging your car, this is going to become less and less of an issue. I should say that actually when I used a better route planner, I used the parameters of you're leaving with 100%, you're running down the battery to around 20% and recharging to 80. Obviously, all of this is sort of a best case scenario, and it doesn't account for anything like chargers not being available or having issues with the charger. So it could take longer. But then in reality, how often are people undertaking journeys like this in EVs? Like, for me, it's just for pleasure. So when it's for pleasure, time's my own. I don't really mind. I'm not under any time restraints. So at number 1 is the charging infrastructure. So what I find really confusing, like difficult with it, is that some have apps, some use contactless, which for me is like a preferred method. Some require subscriptions and you have to have dedicated RFID cards for them and stuff like that. So it's all quite, it's not as easy as it could be. When you look on something like ZapMap, though, it's not complex to filter out if you want contactless as an option, things like that. But if all of the chargers just had the ability to take contactless payments, then it would just make the whole process a hell of a lot easier, because you could rock up at any charger knowing that you can charge there. Additionally, the reliability of some of the charge points has been a bit of an issue for me. So in my experience, I'm just using Ecotricity as an example. I've only had a 40% success rate with Ecotricity. Every other charger that I've used has actually worked, with the exception of one Instavolt on Thursday, or actually it was on Friday. On my return from Manchester, I stopped at an Instavolt and plugged it in, and just it wouldn't work. I don't know. Couldn't get it to work. I moved over to the next bay, and fortunately that machine worked fine, so that it wasn't really an issue. It was an inconvenience to have to move the car over, but in order to charge, I was prepared to do that. Also, some chargers are located in car parks, and you have to pay for the parking while you're paying to charge your car. Like, that's fine, like if you're going to a car park because you want to do some shopping or whatever, you want some lunch, that's absolutely fine. But I mean, when me and Bill went to Birmingham earlier in the year, we stopped at Assal Retail Park, which I can't remember what, I'm sure it was near Birmingham, Assal Retail Park. Anyway, when we entered the car park, unbeknown to me, an ANPR camera had snapped us as soon as we'd entered the car park. We arrived, and I think this was like my second or third attempt at public charging, so it was still quite new to me. And Bill noticed that there was a parking sign. He said, "Oh, we're going to need to pay for parking." Anyway, we didn't think we had any change on us. So Bill downloaded the app while I faffed around trying to get the car to charge, or while I plugged it in. Anyway, he couldn't pay for the parking, so he went over to the machine. I can't remember, it was like a couple of quid, I think, to, or like £1.50 to park for an hour. Anyway, he didn't have enough change on him, because we don't carry much cash with us anymore. But he came back to the car, we scratched around, we managed to find an hour's worth of parking, paid for the ticket, and I think we went off for a walk and a drink while we waited for the car to charge. When we come back, we unplugged and off we went on our way. Anyway, when we returned home a week or so later, we received a parking fine in the post for 60 quid. Because we'd been in the car park for 71 minutes and only paid for 60 minutes of parking. So, like, unbeknown to us, we'd sort of wasted the best part of a quarter of an hour trying to pay for parking and looking for change to pay for the parking. Yeah, so we got a fine for that, which was annoying. I mean, we have tried to appeal it, but they said no, which is fine. We overstayed our, we outstayed our paid for time. I thought it was a bit tight on their part, but that's the case for everyone, isn't it, in car parks? But obviously when you, like, I think it cost me 7 or 8 quid to charge the car plus the £60 fine. That made for an expensive few miles. What does annoy me is I think this is the way some car parks are going now. In order to sort of generate revenue on their part, if they can dish out fines left, right and centre, they're going to try and be quite sneaky. So I wish they would employ sort of like the ticketing system where you go, a barrier lifts up and it dishes out a ticket, you pay for it before you leave, and as long as you're gone within sort of 10 minutes, you're allowed out of the car park. But understandably, that doesn't allow them to dish out fines left, right and centre. So just a word of warning, Assal Retail Park, I hate you, and everyone please don't charge there. But I don't think that's going to have really that great deal of an impact on them. Yeah, so slight frustration, but yeah, just beware. So in conclusion, like, the negative aspects that I've encountered and sort of considered of EV ownership over the past like 7 weeks or so, in reality, most of them are related to sort of like long journeys and public charging. I really do think that in like the years to come, this is only going to get better and easier. I mean, 95% of the time, I'm just pootling around town, sort of like driving to and from work, to and from family, friends, whoever. And that's all comfortably within the range that I can get out of the car just by plugging in and charging at home. So yeah, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think the negatives are that bad, because public charging really isn't that difficult. It's just sort of a bit of a learning curve, which is the case for most things. So yeah, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe. That would be much appreciated. Remember to hit that bell icon to stay notified for whenever I upload a new video. Thanks for watching, and catch me in the next one.